All right. Well, excited to be here today. Thanks again for having me. Today we're going to discuss clienteling, the clienteling gap and how to close it. My name is Ryan Blumenthal, and I am the VP of Business Development at Clientbook. And along with that, I am also a third generation retailer. I own Corinne Jewelers in Toms River, New Jersey, and been there for managing my store and then owning my store for about 20 years. So I'll talk to you today about, my points of view that I learned through both in my store as a retailer and then working at Clientbook as well. Clientbook is a mobile clienteling app and platform. So we help stores facilitate the kind of art of clienteling in their store, how to unlock the possibilities that are there for retailers when it comes to clienteling. And of course, when we talk about clienteling, we're really talking about the technique that retail sales associates use to build relationships with key customers. We're in the relationship business as jewelers. We're very lucky where it's not a very transactional business. So our ability to build lifelong customers is paramount in our businesses. And there's a couple different things that you can do with a customer to help facilitate that. And I like to show this list of all these different activities that are out there that a retail sales associate can be doing in their store to help facilitate these relationships. And it's everything from reaching out for birthdays and anniversaries to cleaning checks, and we got new inventory in, and just, kind of general check-ins, all these things that, you're probably looking at this list and saying, yeah, we either do that or we aspire to do that. And we kind of all look at this list as retailers and understand that these are important. And in a perfect world, we'd like to get them done. And we really have data now to show that this works. This really is to our advantage. And I won't read all of these, but I'll kind of pause on the screen for a moment so everybody could take this in a bit. But, one of the ones I like the most here is that it's anywhere between 5 to 25 times more expensive to add a new customer than it is to retain an existing one. So it's not to say that we shouldn't go out and, attract new customers. We have to do that. But if we don't also have a plan on kind of retainment, if we don't have a retainment model in our store and we're just crossing our fingers, we're really leaving a valuable tool off the table for ourselves. Also, one on here is conversion rates. And you've probably seen this before. There's many industry experts that always attest to this, is that conversion rates are more than double that on existing customers than they are new customers. Why? They already know you. They've already had an experience in your store. So when they come in, you're not proving yourself too much anymore. So the conversion rates just go up. You get a lot less, I'll think about it, or let me ask my wife or bring her in. The conversion rates, you've built that trust already. So it's to your advantage. And the list goes on and on all these kind of positive things that come from clienteling. So, it lends to say, well, all right, easy decision. We'll clientele in the stores and that's that. All the data is proving that we should do that. Except, one thing that we find at Clientbook, and this is really interesting, is that when we talk to retailers, that 90% of them keep data on their clients. So all those things that we talked about before, about birthdays and anniversaries and, important events or just general data to be able to reach out, that about 90% of retailers, they absorb that data. They take it somehow, some way. Yet 20% tell us that they actively use it. So this is what this presentation is about, is that there is a gap in our ability to take in information and then actively use it on a daily basis and create an environment where our sales associates are clienteling every day. So this is an important thing to figure out, and that's what we're going to focus here on in the next half an hour or so. And in order to understand the path forward, we got to take a look at the current state, or at least the current state that I tend to meet most of our clients in. And that is, a lot of this data, or a lot of the execution of this data, is in a bunch of different places. So a sales associate, in order to clientele, so if you were to set the expectation that we really want you to reach out to clients, we want you to reach out for service reminders, we want you to reach out for birthdays, anniversaries, we want you to follow up on that person that came in looking for a ring but didn't buy that day. We want them to do all these things. What this shows is they have to navigate through a couple different data silos in order to take action. And that could be anything from, maybe they're using personal devices still, maybe they have physical notebooks, where I know I did in my stores, or that kind of black client book that we all use. Maybe they're on Google Sheets and they're tracking things that way. There's Post-it notes around the store with important information on it. And then, of course, we have our points of sale, which are great, and they're storing this information. But oftentimes a sales associate gets told to clientele, and they have to navigate through all these things. And that really leads to the number one reason why clienteling tends not to get done in stores, and that it's time consuming and difficult. That's the number one reason when we talk to all these stores, they tell us, after reviewing this with you, the number one reason that it doesn't get done is time consuming and difficult. So it's very manual, and that's the current state in most stores. And it really leads to some problems for associates and some problems for managers and owners. So we'll spend a little time here. But what happens is they are taking too long, or it's too time consuming to take those actions, so they're no longer relevant. That if they really did the math, there's no way that they could apply that formula to everybody they service. So they're going to wind up picking and choosing who they clientele to. And that is just an unscalable way to handle this in stores. And managers and owners, and this is really important, is that there's no visibility. There's clienteling becomes something that's talked about, but it's really hard to hold people accountable. And these are kind of what's being experienced in stores in its current state. And some of you may have experienced this in your stores too. So this is the problem that we need to fix in our stores if we feel passionate about clienteling, and if it's one of the ways that we feel we could really lift the business. So how can this be fixed? The number one thing we need to do is we have to decide that it's important to fix. And clienteling, for as impactful as it is, for as kind of top of mind that it is in our head, that we see a list of those items that we should be doing and they really resonate with us, it often gets kind of traded down the line somewhere, where we're looking for the next jewelry line or looking for next advertising opportunity. Whereas there's this clienteling tool that we have available to us that we should be focused on. So the number one thing we need to do is decide. You have to commit and go down the path of making this a part of your culture. We say burn the ships at Client Book. If anybody's ever heard that reference, it has to do with Cortez arriving in the New World and lighting his old ships on fire. And it was this kind of motivational change that they weren't going to look back and they were going to succeed. So it's a fun story. If you haven't seen that one before, you could Google it. So, but just to reiterate, why is this important? It affects the average sale. Your customers that have shopped with you before spend more on average than new customers. It affects conversion rates. So they come in, they already know you, and like we talked about, they're going to convert at a higher rate. It affects how many people come through your door. So the more people you reach out to, it's very simple, the more people that are going to come through the door. And then lastly, it's something that we can do better than online. It's something that we can do better than the chains. So it really hits home on a lot of things as retailers that we all say, man, this is so important. I mean, what other thing can we focus on that would affect an average sale, conversion rates, how much traffic you have? And it is also part of the kind of competitive differentiator that is the independence. So it's incredibly important that we focus on this as retailers. And in order to do that, we have to eliminate the off ramps. Off ramps are kind of what I use to describe excuses. So an off ramp might be, well, we are committed to clienteling, but we don't really hold them accountable to it. Well, then that's an off ramp, and it really boils down to these are all the things that we tell ourselves of why it can't get done on a daily basis. So really kind of take those off the table. And then we also have to spend some time talking about, well, what is the model that we want to have in the store? What does a retainment model mean in my retail store? Because we have marketing plans that are supposed to engage with new customers and drive them through the door. But do we have a plan for once people purchase here, how do we get them back over and over? And this is a sample of a retainment or a non-retainment model that happens in a lot of stores. And that's people come to your store, they consider what you have, they evaluate it, they hopefully buy it. And that's where a lot stop, where it comes to what's the plan. So when we talk to somebody of what is your current retainment model of your customers, it's not very defined, and it's not the best we can do. So you should aspire to have some sort of retainment model in your store, where it kind of looks something like this, where it kind of starts with the store visit, it goes through the same model of considering and evaluating, and then they buy. But then there's an actual means and list of things that you might do in order to see them again. And it goes from their experience to how are they going to advocate for you? What have you done in the meantime to bond them to the store? These are all kind of things that really need to be thought about and kind of developed as to what that means in your store. The next thing we're going to do is talk about kind of that's the how, right? But we need to talk about what we're going to do to close this gap, really take action on it. And for us, it comes down to 4 things at ClientBook. What we focus on is how do we drive these behaviors? We know the tasks that we'd like to see done in stores, but how do we really drive the behavior that we're looking for out of the sales associates or the store overall? First thing is putting all the information in one place. And we're going to break these down in future slides, but I'll just review the 4 with you now. Technology has to be easy and used to adopt. And we'll walk through this, but there really needs to be a technology play here. And obviously that's why I'm with ClientBook today and speaking to you from there. They have to automate some things because we're going to see the scale of this and run through some examples. And it really can't be done without some level of automation. And then lastly is measure. How are we going to measure this on a daily basis, on a weekly basis? So let's go through the first one. And that's putting everything in one place. And this is a huge part of getting this done. When we looked at that kind of current state of retail in stores, it had a lot to do with, well, a little bit's over in the point of sale and a little bit's over in a third-party messenger. And then some things are in handwritten notes. And, you have all these different data silos. So whether it's ClientBook or a different tool, what we focus on is how do we get, and not everything, but just the relevant things that a retailer would need to get all into one place. Because we know that the number one reason that clienteling doesn't get done is that it's time consuming and difficult. So that's a big thing for us to solve problem for in stores, is taking all that information and getting it into one place. The next one is how do we make this easy? And we spent a lot of time on this at ClientBook because there's the list goes on and on of great tools that are out there, what's called CRMs, customer relationship managers, and there's all sorts of tools on the market. But very few would actually work if implemented into a retail store, because they're really meant for people that sit behind a desk and have the time to go through lots of different fields and navigate them and put in the right information. Whereas retailers really don't, that's not their life, at all. So you have to make it a lot easier for this to work in stores. And you could do that in a number of different ways. One of the ways you could do it is it has to be very easy and understandable what a sales associate needs to do on a given day in order to clientele. Animation we have here. Hopefully the sound is on too. But we have to engage that sales associate on a daily basis with the right things to do and make it really easy for them to accomplish that. And as you can see here, we need to have a very simplistic user interface for them so that it's not complex. And the next thing we need to do is segment our customer lists. And this is something where, and what I mean by this is who are our VIPs in our customer database? Who's our first time customers this year? Who are people that I like to call steady eddies that we see yearly? Maybe they don't spend the most amount of money, but they're great customers. And if we were to not see them at the same velocity that we normally do, it would be, problematic. And that would really decrease business. So we need to identify them, and we need to be able to quickly search them out and know how to clientele towards them. But it all starts with, you need to segment your customer database a bit. And that's one of the things that we help clients do at Client Book. The next thing is, how do we automate this for scale? So when I would break down, I know in my own store, if I wanted everybody to reach out to my clients for birthdays and anniversaries, and I wanted that to be done, 10 days prior or 14 days prior, and I would say, all right, sales associates, here's your job. We're going to reach out. We're going to proactively reach out to people. If you start doing the math of just how many people that is, I know for us, we had, years ago, it was 6, 7, 8,000 life events we had across our active customer base. So people that have purchased with us in the last couple of years. And if I were to set the expectation that you have to reach out to all of them, you just couldn't scale that. There was going to be certain people that got left off. And that's no way to increase the odds that you're going to see more people in your store. So sales associates are going to just kind of pick and choose. So there's certain things that we need to apply automation to. The key for this, and what we try to develop, is how do we still come off as personalized? And that this isn't just kind of a bot reaching out to them. Well, there's ways to do that. And whether it's a Client Book or something else, that is something that you should strive for. But when we think back to kind of that retainment model of, well, somebody bought an engagement ring, and what would we like to see afterwards? There's a lot of different things that you could do with your customer base in between them buying, hopefully. And some of that you're going to want a sales associate to do, and then other things you're really going to want to automate. I truly believe there needs to be after purchase thank yous, service reminders. There needs to be check-ins with that client that have nothing to do with selling them a new piece of jewelry, but rather just checking in, making sure that they were thrilled with the experience. And then you get to earn the right to reach out to them again, to invite them into the store for an event, or to have them come in for their birthday or anniversary. But we really need to learn how to scale that for each and every customer, and that's a whole lot of work. So you can automate these things. We'll show you a quick kind of how we do it at Client Book, but what we do is we take each action and then we do kind of create a model around that. So what I just showed you an example of is, in your stores, you can start to think about, well, if we sell an engagement ring, what does that mean a month down the road? What does that mean 3 months down the road? What would we like to see happen with that customer? And you could do that in so many different ways now with technology. You could, all that is there for us to be able to interpret and create models around. So it's really interesting what you could do now. But you start out with some very basic, okay, if the customer buys this, and it's usually broken into 2 or 3 different categories. One would be your bridal sale. So somebody buys an engagement ring. There's certain check-ins with that client that are meaningful to the store. So not only do you have the normal thank yous, but we know that there's going to be some wedding band opportunities down the road that we should take advantage of. And that should be kind of part of your retainment model, that you're reaching out at certain points with a certain message. The next one being you sold them jewelry. Now you may want to do, if they bought something that is over $1,000, or if they bought something for under $1,000, maybe there's a model there, but you could define it. And that becomes the expectation for a sales associate. And then lastly, what we see clients do is, for fine watches too, there might be a different sequence afterwards. But what this ultimately becomes about is you're driving the behaviors in your store. Certain behaviors will be driven by the sales associate and their responsibility. And then other ones you have to automate because there's just going to be so much for your sales associates to do that they might be not be able to complete it all. And then lastly, in step number 4, you really need to be able to measure it. And this is something that really doesn't get paid a lot of attention to when it comes to clienteling, but we really believe that you have to create clienteling as a KPI in your business. So what does that mean? It means that in the other facets of your business that are so important in sales, and what your average sale is and what your inventory turn, you have those numbers and you have a means to be able to report on it. And we really think that if clienteling is such an important goal, which we think it should be, that you have to assign some numbers to it. You have to be able to say, okay, here's the sequence we want. It's made up of these things. And we need to know if we're able to complete that as a group. And if we did complete it, what did it look like? So we want you to be able to track it. One easy way to do this when you're first starting out is just to set the expectation with your team that every sales associate is responsible for 5 unique customer reach outs. And again, we know what those are. We know the thank yous, we know the reach out for life events, check-ins with the client, but you could start goal setting that easy, where even if you didn't have a robust tool like Client Book, you could just start out and say, hey, the expectation is 5 unique reach outs to clients, and I want you to write down what you did. And obviously that's manual, but it's a place to start. And at least it becomes a number. At least it becomes something that isn't just talked about at the store, but you're actually measuring it every day. So very important thing for us to do. And just to recap, the 4 things that I want to leave you with today is that if you're going to lift the veil on clienteling, if you're really going to kind of put this as a major emphasis, we believe that you'll need to do 4 things. That putting everything in one place as best you can will be vital for your staff. That making it easy, you have to put yourself in the shoes of a sales associate that's kind of getting pulled from one thing to the next. that might not have the greatest comfort with technology. You have to put yourself in those shoes and say, this has to be easy. And three, really what tools can you use to automate some of it, or what touch points are you comfortable with being automated versus it being a manual reach out for each one? And then lastly is that being said, how will you measure this? If this is an important goal, what is the number that this should look like on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis? So that's something that we do every day at ClientBook. We're happy to share more information with you and kind of walk you through some of these models that we help retailers create. And we're very happy to be part of a handful of organizations in the industry that you may be a part of as well, and speak at these shows, and we'll be attending at these upcoming shows. And again, really thank you for your time today, but I'd like to leave it open to some questions. And hey, Mike.
Hey, yeah. I was gonna say, if anybody has any questions, just leave them in the chat. Can you see the chat?
Yes. Cool. What does the future? You want me to just read them off, Mike, or would you?
Yeah. Go through them if you want. Yeah.
What does the future look like for ClientBook with metaverse and other new tech? Oh my God, metaverse. Listen, I won't pretend to be an expert in the metaverse. I really won't. What I can say is that, I've been hearing about the end of retail now for like 20 years. For even when I was a kid and around my parents, everything was going to put out the independent. Everything was going to replace the independent. And that's been happening now forever. And now, new things come along in the metaverse and all these things. And it'll be the talk of, well, people won't need to go to stores. They'll be in these virtual environments and that'll, replace stores. And I really just think that our value to the industry has always been the relationships that we have with our clients and how we take care of them, and the counsel that we are able to provide to them. And I don't see that going away anytime soon. And I think we're very fortunate to be in jewelry because it is connected so much to a one-to-one relationship where people are want to be advised on it, and who they want to go to. They want to go to their local family-owned independent. But being quick to change and adapt has always been kind of the retailers that do that, they succeed, right? Next question is, any tips on whether associates follow up be done by the person who closed the sale or others? How does the client react to others following up? Personally, I think it should be the associate that sold it to them following up. I think that is kind of best practice. Now, some stores have, service coordinators, and they're following up for certain things, and maybe one person sold it to them, but they generally do business with this other sales associate. There's a lot of different ways that you could kind of set up rules, but I would just be consistent no matter which that you kind of set up in your store. But I would say most people are going to have the sales associate that sold that item follow up with the customer.